Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Weekend Warrior podcast. I'm Matt, and this is my homie Skiff.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing?
Today, we have a special guest, Isaac Toyos, who will share his experience in the Army, Reserve, and his transition from senior NCO to commissioned officer.
Hi, everyone.
Awesome. So before we dive in, we're just going to talk about a quick recap. If you missed last week, we kind of introduced ourselves a little bit, talked a little bit too much about football and kind of ranted a little bit. So we'll try to keep it tight this time. Some other things that we're going to go over is some quick Army news. And then we got everything divided by segments this time. So it's a little bit more orderly. And then it's mostly going to be going over with our guests. And we're going to have a great time with Isaac here. And he's going to, fucking drop some great knowledge onto you guys and everything like that, especially help some of y'all out that are looking for some of this information. So just go into the quick Army news if you want to start off, Matt.
Yeah, I got you. So this week, the Army decided, focus on retention. Nah, they didn't. They decided to show that, hey, we're going to get new PT uniforms. The last time that the Army issued new PT uniforms was in 2017, where we went from the grays to the black and yellow. So now they're saying that the Sergeant Major of the Army is like, hey, I don't want these uniforms anymore. It's either too cold and the wind's getting through and the design's not as Army as it should be. So I guess we're getting new PT uniforms. Hasn't said any ideas of what they're going to be, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be sponsored by Monster and Zyn. So might have Zyn and Monster on the back. So I don't know, but so what do you guys think about that?
Hey man, I'm all, I'm more of a, hey, there's mold in the barracks, let's focus that first kind of guy. But I mean, if we want to look prettier, I guess, we got to look fabulous. I'm just saying, let's throw on some more medals like, some of our other people do that we've seen, other than foreign militaries. I want like a vest next. I want just all medals. I don't want ribbons. I want medals. Only medals. I want to walk around like if I go through a metal detector, I'll set off a fire alarm or something. All right? Like that's what I want. What are your thoughts on that, Isaac?
So I kind of have a not necessarily a personal issue with it, but uniforms are uniforms. They change ever so often. I fear that we're going to end up becoming those guys that when we first joined, and you run into those folks where they're like, oh, I remember when we used BDUs back then. We're going to eventually turn into those guys. So it's a way of going forward. But yeah, I like that comparison that you did with the issues that we have going on in housing and barracks, and just kind of like where the priorities stand. I know that the military is doing a big push on that over the next few years, especially after that GAO report. For those who don't know what GAO means, it's the General Accountability Office. They are run by Congress, and so they did a report on military barracks and housing in general, and it was bad. And so each one of the services kind of had to put up a fix-it plan to make sure that all the policy regarding housing going forward works. It obviously these changes don't happen overnight. They take a while, but hopefully over the next few years, probably by the time we retire, we'll see some changes.
Yeah, by the time you retire and by the time Colby gets out, I'll be in for. I got a while to go.
Yeah, I'm out. So it's like I'm at the point where I'm already on the exit door path. I'm on that path to retirement, so I'm good to go. But I'll tell you this though. One of the things the only thing that I'm worried about is there's no design yet for it, right? This is just an announcement. For anybody that's not aware, this all happened during the annual meeting in Exposition. It's like a big meeting. They bring in, they do 3 giant civilian meets a year, and that's when they invite civilian contractors and senior level of these contracting companies following Raytheon and all that. And then they also invite a bunch of senior enlisted officers and stuff. They do private dinners, and they meet and they do these conferences and expos to show all the new technology as well as a lot of the current information to keep what's going on. Of course, all this information is publicly available. None of this is secret at all. This is all over. None of this stuff that we're sharing with you is going to be in some unclassified system. This shit's on YouTube. This was live streamed, and this was a public event. One of the things that they also announced and they came out with, and they already have it out to everybody, is the new Army Blue Book. My thoughts on the Army Blue Book, personally, I think it's nice. I like the references that they have in it, because the digital, which we're going to link into this video for everybody to have, is they give you a reference on the digital sheet, so you can just click the links, and it's a hyperlink to all the regulations and all of the platforms like MHS Genesis, and IPSA and all those HR and medical platforms, as well as a lot of the Army platforms that the soldiers use. Now, my problem with it is some specific chapters, chapter 3-2. I think it's a little too broad, and people are going to get the wrong idea about things. You know, they reference like certain things, like, for example, 3-2. I will quote it for you, in fact, right here, and you'll read it. 3-2 has a section called social media. All soldiers will follow the Army social media guide for personal and official accounts. Cool. Right after that, commanders have the authority to prohibit personnel from participating in any cyber or social media activity that will adversely affect the good order and discipline within a command. Here's my issue with that. This is going to apply to active duty, reserve, guard, anybody within the Army, right? It's a little broad there because you're saying, okay, the commander decides what's good conduct and good order. Okay, just because Private Snuffy has an OnlyFans or some shit, you know, he's trying to make pay. I don't think you've seen the poverty wages they get right now. Just kidding. No, but, you know, it's like, you know, that could create a lot of issues and stuff. We've seen it in Army what the fuck moments lately where, like, I swear to God, I saw one. It was like a live counseling session. A company commander was giving a live counseling session,
man,
to a soldier. Like on TikTok Live, I think it was, right?
Yeah, it was. I think it was Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and TikTok Live.
Yeah, they did all everything.
Yeah.
And it blew up. And people were, when I saw that, my eyes were like fucking exploded. I'm like, why the fuck would you do that? Like, you're putting your fucking soldier on blast in front of the entire fucking, like, social media population?
That was wild.
That is insane. But that's just my only gripe with some of this stuff. Is like, it goes to super broad. Now, if you actually look at the social media guide, it's very specific. What they mean is like nothing that's like extremist or anything like that. They're very clear on their definitions, but then it's like, you know, they do a reference and then they go broad, you know, I feel like it should just be reference and like a summary. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
You go ahead, Isaac.
So I'm taking back to when we had the whole Vanessa Gillen case a few years ago, when the Army started doing all these audits and looking at the command climate. And one of the main issues that they found was that the phrase commander's discretion was starting to become a problem. They gave commanders so much authority as far as that they really went beyond what the commander's bias is, right? Because, you know, we all have some type of bias. We can be objective, but so I always say this: I'm objective, but I'm not unbiased. I mean, there are certain things and there's certain ways that I see the world. And so I've seen that happening over, you know, this whole social media issue, because you might have a commander that might deem whatever post that you make as extremist simply because they don't share a specific type of view with you, either politically, socially, or whatever. I mean, it will all come down to the channels of challenging whenever if you get in trouble for certain types of online conduct, if the review process for that is actually going to be unbiased. So that's interesting to see going forward.
I agree. I can't agree more than that. Like you nailed the hammer on the head, and I completely agree, man. I've seen it myself. You've seen it. Matt's seen it. Sometimes you get commanders that just have that God complex, and damn, their favorite line is, "You can't take away from regulation, but you can add to it."
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, where's the limit? You know,
that's their favorite thing. That's when they go to the command course and they're just like, "Hey guys, there's this quote that you guys can use, and it works wonders."
It works wonders,
and they use it all the time. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, man.
They'll give you that at CCC. They'll also give that, you know, that field grade lobotomy that you get once you hit major and everything.
Yeah.
You know, and then,
like, hey guys, be empathetic to your soldiers. I like just add to it. All right, guys.
Sympathy. What's that? No, but honestly though, I do think the Blue Book's nice. I've had a chance to read through it and actually like kind of look through some of the things. It's short. It's nice. It's a lot shorter than I'm kind of comparing it to like what I've seen before when the Army kind of did some stuff like this. I like it. I just feel like they need to be more specific. Obviously, it's too late. They already shotgun blasted this out to the public, and that's why I'm sharing it with everybody, because I made sure that it was shareable. I Googled Army Blue Book first fucking link, and it just went to it. So I was like, all right, well, I guess it's not a secret, so I'm just going to link it in the video then. So we're going to provide that in the link below. That way y'all can check it out. So we went a little bit over time in that segment. So the next segment that we're going to do is we're going to introduce our guest. Matt, if you want to go ahead and introduce Isaac.
Alrighty. Again, welcome to the Weekend Warrior podcast. We're glad that you were able to come onto this podcast and explain the transition from being a senior NCO to a commissioned officer. So, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and a background before joining the Army?
Of course. So, like you guys mentioned, my name is Isaac Toyos. I am 30 years old. I joined the Army when I was 17 years old with my parents' signature on my 17th birthday, actually. And I joined the Army Reserves. I enlisted as a 92 Foxtrot, which is a petroleum supply specialist. I went to basic training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I did advanced individual training at Fort Lee, Virginia. And afterwards, I was assigned to a fuel unit in Puerto Rico. I'm mostly working FSSPs. About 3 years after that, as soon as I got promoted to Life Sergeant, I went AGR. So for those who don't know, the AGR program is still the best kept secret in the Army. Active Guard Reserve. So I was on Title 10 orders for about 7 years. Out of those 7 years, 3 years were as an Army recruiter, stationed in Puerto Rico. One of the best jobs in the world, also one of the most stressful, but definitely one of the jobs that really helped me get out of my shell because I was a complete introvert. At the time, I still consider myself an introvert, but now I kind of have the tools a little bit to kind of get out of my shell and interact with folks. So that was a good opportunity for me. And then I PCS to El Paso, Texas, where I met Skip and Fordham, which is an honest, really cool experience working with you guys. While I was there, we worked at the brigade level. I worked in the SPO, which is the support operations section. I also worked in the S2 and the S3. So I did a little bit of everything, which also helped me be a little bit more multifaceted.
Especially with the amount of work that we're having us do, right?
I know. It's not even a quarter. That's not even a quarter of what I do on the civilian side.
Yeah.
Yeah. I took full advantage when I was in the reserves. Between the reserves and active duty, I managed to get a bachelor's in emergency management and homeland security, a master's in executive leadership, and then another master's in legislative affairs. Didn't have to pay, the Army paid for about 99% of all of that. The only thing that I kind of had to pay out of pocket was just like the graduation fees and all that. So
yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
How dare they? Like absolutely crazy.
I know.
Bastards.
Technically, you can claim that. You can claim that on your taxes, so you really end up getting that money back.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Just making sure you got good. As long as you're covered, man. I didn't want you to go like without coverage.
Exactly. And honestly, between the folks that I work with, just like hearing like the student loan debt, prices that they have, and just knowing that I can just go home and just relax. That hey. None of my degrees, I didn't have to pay a single cent for them. Those are awesome.
You're like, I don't have to work a third job.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, here's the other thing, right? And so when I was stationed in El Paso, I really got tired of being active duty. I wanted to do something else. I asked for the Army to send me to, at the very least, the East Coast, as far East Coast as possible, and then they came back and gave me orders to San Diego. So I said, you know what? I think it's time for me to go and do something else. So I decided to leave the AGR program. Yeah. I left. I started to work as a contractor on the civilian side. And then I also worked I did that for about 6 months of working out of Joint Base Andrews. And then I jumped over and worked at the Pentagon as a contractor as well. And then I still do the Army Reserves on the side. I decided to apply to the officer candidate school. And then, I got accepted to that course. And you guys are still there. Sorry, I'm having connectivity issues.
No, don't worry about it. We're still here. You're good.
Awesome. So I decided to apply to the officer candidate school. The rest is history. I just graduated this past summer, so that was definitely a really awesome transition. So I went on active duty orders for about 3 months. I came back. I returned to my regular work. I started teaching as a professor online. So I teach a leadership development course out of South College. And then just doing the Army Reserves on the side.
Cool. What MOS did you commission into?
So I commissioned as a quartermaster officer. The 90.
Choosing the logistics path. Okay. for our viewers not familiar with that, once there you have three kind of like logistics sides. You have quartermaster, transportation, and ordnance. Was it ordnance? And they all, when you become a captain, you go to a logistics course and you get a new MOS. They all branch under logistics. So you become a logistics officer at the captain level. So a loggy, huh? All right.
A loggy, yeah.
I mean, that's the best way to get promoted too.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
you just fart in the right direction, you'll pick up lieutenant colonel, man. You got it.
Honestly,
I mean, if you really think about it, like the reserves is really logistics heavy. So because that we are the support of the army, so it kind of makes sense that logistics officers kind of, in a way, run the show a little bit, because I hate to say it, and there's a really great quote that I think it was Eisenhower that said it. It's like good leaders talk tactics, great leaders talk logistics.
That's right.
Yep, that's right.
I love it.
So
great book.
You were saying that you joined at the age of look at that loggy book. Look at that loggy book,
baby.
Hell
what does that start with, baby? Beans. But yeah, no, that's good, man.
So you're saying you joined at the age of 17. What initially inspired you to join the army, and how did that decision shape your early experiences?
So I've always wanted to join the army. I think that I've never had a memory where I didn't want to join the army. And it all stems from the fact that I come from a family that is very devoted to service in one way or another. My mother is a patient's advocate, so she works with patients all the time to make sure that their rights are being catered to or met when it comes to dealing with like health insurance and all that stuff. So I managed to grow up seeing how devoted she was with working with that sector. And then my dad is an army veteran. So my dad served in the army for about 10 years as an artillery soldier. My grandfather was also in the army, infantry soldier as well, during Vietnam. And so, yeah, that's essentially what inspired me. It's like I've always wanted to follow in that. There's this one thing that my mother always kind of taught me. It's like, if you could do good things for others, then you have a moral responsibility to do those things. And that service is one of the best ways that you can do it. So that's kind of like what inspired me to do it.
Hey, Starship Troopers, man, earn your citizenship today. Be a citizen. So that's awesome. So we kind of already talked about, like, the whole issues last episode about like work-life balance and sometimes become hectic. Especially, you're working over in like the Pentagon area and everything like that. And you're doing like super high level stuff that you can't really talk about, secret squirrel kind of stuff. But how do you balance your army life and then your civilian life to make sure that you're successful in both?
I think I'm probably, I'm blessed that one of my jobs feeds into the other in a way. So I'm never disconnected from the military in one way or the other, right? So I work at the sustainment office at the Pentagon. And so, working at the sustainment office at the Pentagon and then being a logistics officer, it kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. So I'm never disconnected. So that's one way that I can find ways to manage that. And then it's just sometimes life is a little bit unbalanced, and that's okay. So I see it as going in waves. Sometimes I'm at like my peak stress, and then it'll like go down and it'll be a little bit more easier for me to manage. I try to at the very least stay connected on the military side once a week. At the very least, the very core key people that I always talk to, they can reach me either through social media, through text, or phone call, or whatever. And I make myself available to them. They kind of know a little bit of my situation, where it's like I usually don't have my phone on me during the day because I work at a secure facility. So I need to step out and do those things, but it's really manageable. I do feel for the folks that work just like regular civilian jobs that are not tied with the army, because the moment that I left the AGR program and I went back into the reserves, I started noticing it's like, hell, this is not easy.
Yeah.
This is very hard to do. And I really got back to understanding, was like, all right, now I understand the phrase like quite the citizen, because this is rough. This is rough sometimes, especially, with the family lives gets in the way, or the folks that have like other jobs, because I have 2 other jobs outside of the military. And then I also work at a nonprofit board as well. It's sometimes a little bit hard to manage, but I just roll with the punches at this point.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, it can be very challenging. There's some people who are blessed that are TPU, weekend warrior kind of stuff, and they only gotta they only have super minimal Army responsibility and super minimal like civilian responsibility. And then you got people who have like more senior level jobs, more intermediate level jobs. And it's like, I'll give an example, like my wife, right? She works on average every 2 weeks, about 100 hours on average every 2 weeks. And then her Army commitment is like about 20 hours every 2 weeks, give or take, you know? So it's like, you're talking 120 hours, and you're talking like an 8-month pregnant woman who's pretty pissed.
That's rough.
So,
yeah.
So it's a pretty nasty combination. So it can be very difficult for some. And then it can also, you know, it can be very time consuming. You know, not everybody gets that blessing of being at like a super easy, cozy job and then a super easy, cozy assignment too. It can be rough on one or the other. It just sucks for some people who have it rough on both sides as well. So it's definitely
and you guys can do the comparison at the very least with the folks that you worked with in the past. Look at the most successful officers and senior enlisted folks. They're sometimes militech. Simply because they never disconnect from the military side, which is kind of like understandable, and I see it now a little bit more than usual.
Yeah, no, exactly. Miltech's the only thing that I really feel for my Miltech population is the whole bonus situation. I really feel for them, and the whole TRICARE situation. If for those that don't know, a Miltech, you're required to be in the reserves of the Guard. You have to be in the reserves of Guard to become a Miltech. It's a requirement for you to be active. Like as soon as you retire, you lose your job the second you retire, unless you put in an extension. The extension has to be approved, and it's only lasts 1 year. That's it.
You got to retire from
both. They're not allowed to have TRICARE at all unless they're activated for a mission or something for more than 30 days. No TRICARE, so they have to get federal insurance, which is usually like around $1,600 a month for a family. You know, it's not cheap, and that's on the low side. I've seen way bigger policies that cost way more. The benefit that they have is they're in federal service, so they get federal benefits, but you know, they also have to, God forbid, you know, if you're in a toxic unit and you're also a Miltech in that toxic unit, that's pretty rough. That's pretty rough because you're now a Mr. and then usually like a sir or sergeant or whatever. And it's not usually a fun mix. I've seen people who are Miltechs, they're like specialists, and they're Miltechs at like a senior command level too. And that could get pretty toxic too when it's like, hey, he has like a commander that's kind of messing with them. And it's like, hey, motherfucker, that's fine. I'll wait till Monday, you know? Just wait. You know? So it's like, you see kind of both sides. So it's kind of weird how it works. And I'm sure Matt sees that at the Merc too. And I'm sure you see it too all the time.
Yeah.
Like people forget that thing in the reserves, you know, they think rank also equals their civilian like level as well. Absolutely not. I've seen PV2s make more money than a captain or a major.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's very different culture.
And I experienced that also when we were in El Paso.
Yeah.
I had soldiers that I knew for a fact, like they were like a petroleum engineer on the civilian side. They're like a specialist.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, it's insane the amount of money that you're making now. And I used to kind of like, why don't you try to do more on the civilian side? On the Army side, I'm just in it for either the paycheck or they pay for my school and I'm just, you know, writing my contract out or whatever. But it's also hard for, exactly, with the insurance. Yeah. But it's also hard, especially if you're a Miltech or a DA civilian, to disconnect from or separate that authority that you have on the military side and on the civilian side. It's I rarely saw it, and those from the people who I saw it from, though these folks were exemplary leaders. You know, because work with a bunch of them. So one person that comes to mind is just, you know, God rest his soul, Sergeant Major Walker.
Oh yeah.
One that for me, he was just exemplary in doing that because, you know, he was just awesome. So yeah, but then I've seen it in other folks where it's just like, no,
it's a rarity, honestly, nowadays. It really is. Like you see it like when it first started, when they really pushed for the whole Miltech program and everything like that, like a long time ago, there was like, you could see like more of the senior people that were on their way out and kind of like how they were able to make that disconnect. And now you see it like the intermediate people who've been there like the last 10 years in the Army and stuff. They don't really make that disconnect. And maybe that's just because, you know, maybe it's how they were trained up and stuff on the Army side. They don't want to make that disconnect. Army's their life, all cool and all that. But, you know, it's a good point. Now, so what we're going to talk about now, kind of expanded this introduction a bit, but it's awesome. I want to talk more about your transition in sense of what helped you the most. Like, so what did you take from as being a senior NCO? We kind of touched on it a bit, but what did you take from being a senior NCO that really helped you through the whole OCS process and everything like that?
So the moment that I left the AGR program, that I knew I had been accepted to officer candidate school, I, was really excited to go. It took about a year and a half for me to actually end up going to the course itself. But one of the things that I saw when I ended up going to OCS was, and I saw it like the first day, it's like you have to, just because I'm showing up here as a sergeant first class, does not, at the moment that I crossed those arches that said officer candidate school, I'm an officer candidate. I had to leave my rank at the door. It was a little bit easier for me, but then I saw other folks that were prior enlisted that were E7s, E6s, and they were sometimes having a tough time transitioning over because your cadre in officer candidate school, they're E6s and E7s.
Wow.
We had one E7, and all our other cadre were E6s.
Oh,
and
wow.
so sometimes when you're really going through it, and mind you, it's a very strenuous course. When you're really going through it, sometimes it'll like pop up into your mind. It's like, why the hell am I doing this? I'm a senior NCO. Why are you treating me like this? It'll pop up. Like, I'm not gonna lie. But
you're like, wait a minute, I'm a sergeant first class. You're like, what are you telling me?
I never expressed it to anybody, and I never made I made sure that the way that I conducted myself, I didn't have like a superiority complex there. But especially when you're like really ticked off because you're paying, because you're the whole mass punishment, whatever. It's like, come on, guys. And you also have to think, right? You're going through that course, but there's also initial entry soldiers that are going through that course as well. They just graduated from basic training and now they're here. They're essentially private.
Yeah.
Wait, you can go straight through OCS after getting.
Actually, we're gonna talk about that at the end during our closing thoughts. One of my closing thoughts is actually talking just about that process and your thoughts on that process, because I got some pretty good questions for you that probably. I know your personal opinion on some of them. So I can't wait to
of course. But that transition, while you're going through that course, there was a point where I completely forgot that I was a sergeant first class minus when I was helping, some of my classmates out with certain things, either through military history, drill and ceremony, land nav, all those things. And mind you, I'm no expert at any of those, but whatever knowledge that I had going in with my 13 years of service at the time, I try to make good use with the rest of my classmates as well, because I really wanted to make sure. And then the other thing is explaining to folks how the Army works and how the Army Reserves works. Most of those folks, I'm pretty sure, and I really hope that their recruiter explained to them how the Army Reserves work. But then I also took, my time to explain it specifically, both as a former recruiter and, as a person that's used almost every program that the Army Reserves has to his advantage. So yeah.
Awesome. Matt, you want to hit him with the last part of it? This is going to be the last question for this section. This is just the segment that covers your transition to the commissioned officer. So
what advice would you give other senior NCOs considering making the leap to becoming commissioning officers?
Be proud of the fact that you were a senior NCO, but also have more willingness to learn what it is to be an officer. I have already started to see that. And mind you, I've worked with officers for like the last 4 years, but when you're in it, it's completely different. Because now, when you're working with a lieutenant, you're like, this person doesn't have that much experience. Let me take this person by the hand. So when people initially see me, they like, all right, this is another lieutenant that we have to take by the hand. So you
look at this butter bar.
Exactly. So you kind of have to gently explain or show. Let's go with that. Show that your knowledge is a little bit more advanced, but not to the point where you're completely disconnected because you think you were this hot shot E7 and now you're this person that walks on water as a lieutenant, because that is just a recipe for disaster. So just kind of like keep a level head. And at the end of the day, the moment that I commissioned with those other new lieutenants that were just had gone through OCS, you guys are at the same level. It's not different. Just because I have a little bit more knowledge doesn't mean that I'm more than you. So those things are key.
I mean, you got. I know damn well you got to your first place and you're like, I'm a fucking Mustang. All right, I did this shit before. All right, I'm fucking here now. All right.
That is the coolest nickname that I've ever heard for somebody in the Army. Like you have like your artillery, right? Or your red legs, right? Or all those things. But like Mustang, that is the best nickname out.
For those that don't know, Mustang is prior enlisted to officer. You
Mustangs.
Make that transition, you're officially a fucking Mustang. I wish I could say I was a Mustang. I'm not. I'm a dirty ass little, just regular
little
ROTC
boy.
I got two mighty Mustangs next to me right now, so I gotta watch what I say. So we our next segment was kind of the candidate schools like experience, like kind of like some of the stuff you went through. We kind of already touched a bit on that, so we're gonna skip kind of like one of our first questions we had for you, but we're gonna move on to the next one, which is we already described your experience, but can you go in more depth on like what it was like? What was your day to day when you were there?
So, officer candidate school is essentially like going through basic training again. It's just 12 weeks of like just straight basic training, but at a more personalized level. When you go through basic, you go through things like land navigation, but you do land navigation as a group. You're never out there on your own. But when you're at OCS, you have to do it on your own, right? And it's a graduation requirement, and you do day and night land nav, and you're really going through all of it. There's certain points where you work as a team, but at the end of the day, it comes down to you specifically. My day to day at OCS, it consisted of early morning PT, and then you get bombarded for like the first 2 weeks. You're just bombarded with classes, specifically history classes, and it's military history. And I will tell you this. It took you guys about I don't know how long you guys were in ROTC for, if you did the whole 4 years or 2, but when you go through ROTC, they teach you military history in those 2 or 4 years. They condense military history in OCS to about a week and a half. Not even a week and a half. I think it's like 36 hours total.
What is it? Done LPF or whatever it is?
It's done.
Yeah.
I was a 2-year program kind of guy because I came in and I did the fast track program. Matt, you also did the 2-year program.
I did 3.
You did the 3-year. You were kind of in the middle. So I did the 2 years. So when I came in, it was already that was taught in the first 2 years, and I already had to know it like right off the bat. And I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, and it's like wild, right? Like the amount of information they just dump on you. Yeah. Like all of a sudden, like I feel for you, man, because you're getting graded on this shit, like right off the rip. You're like pass fail.
Yeah.
Yes, and honestly, and unfortunately, that was the exam that actually it recycled the most folks out of my class. So my OCS class started with about 161. We graduated, I think it's like 120 something by the end of the 12 weeks. Most of those folks left during land navigation. Mostly things are history. Number 1 was medical. History, land navigation, and then 1 or 2 exams in between, ruck marches, discipline issues. But it's rough, especially because you're doing all of this, but you're also doing ruck marches. You're also dealing with cadre. You're dealing with the stress of trying to get used to working as a team, between your squad, your platoon, your company, and then you also have the different assignments. They assign you as a squad leader, platoon leader, a platoon sergeant, company commander, XO. So you have all these other requirements that you have to meet in the meantime. It's stressful. And when you take that test, you don't have anything. There's no control left there. You're going in with the knowledge that you have. And they teach you everything from military history from before the American Revolution all the way to Iraq and Afghanistan, counterinsurgency, and what's next for the Army. And so it's a little bit rough. And they're not like very generic questions like, oh, what year did the Battle of whatever happened? No, it's like this
short answer. Short answers of .NPF, all that stuff.
It's like describe General Lee's failure at Gettysburg kind of thing. What is it that led to that? Why did Maryland decide not to join the Union? What was the issue with? And then it'll jump to like, why did Washington? How did Washington cross Delaware? And like, what were the specific things that made him successful? And it's not like, oh, he had more troops. Like, no, he had like, oh, they're something specific. They had villagers that helped them cross that river because they had knowledge on how that river worked. And then it'll take you to a different question, comparing it to like some folks that fought in World War II, you know, somebody else that had to cross the river and complete a mission, how that person was successful. It was a really tough course. Honestly, one of the more challenging portions of OCS.
During how you crossed the Delaware? Speedboat.
Yeah.
So I did have a question on that. Did they also make you do a battle analysis by chance?
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
Yes.
Fuck that.
Yes.
Fuck that.
That's the worst, man. That is the worst.
Yes, it was the worst just because they set you down. They gave you about 2 hours worth of a class for like that battle analysis. And I remember it. It's like it was a platoon sergeant, well, as a captain with with a corporal that acted as the platoon sergeant and like 21 other folks, and they had to take a hill during World War II. And so you had to do like this full battle analysis on like, and then just explain like how did he use the offensive strategies to achieve that or something else, right? It was rough.
What could they improve? Like, what did they miss out on? Was it the surprise element? Like, was it location?
Exactly.
They go over all like, what's that damn acronym they always fucking say? It's up to METC or something like that, or
METC or
METC. There we go.
Yeah, METC.
Yeah, they do like a METC analysis, you know?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the questions that we had to describe. So you have to like really know this and then sit down and write 500 words on it.
Yeah.
And they were like very specific. I think we ended up getting 1 person recycled on that. And that was towards the end. That was like a week and a half.
That would be the shittiest part to get recycled on. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Can you imagine doing that again? Ours, I still remember mine. So for ours, when you go through ROTC, it's a little different. They make you do a slideshow and you brief it to the lieutenant colonel, like one-on-one. So it's kind of stressful a little bit. Mm-hmm. I was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I still remember mine to this day because it felt like I was getting fucking hazed. Like it was
the entire time, dude.
It was a battle in like a ravine that they were on the side of a hill, the most like dumb location possible, and they were getting partied from the other hill, like just because they're on the side, and like it was horrible. And the colonel was just bashing me with like these crazy scenario questions, like what happened if they would have did like an ambush at 2 a.m. instead,
wild.
Like,
yeah,
or what if they attacked from the north? Like,
he was
dude.
He was a crazy professor to have for military history.
Yeah.
Dude, and for me, he had already gotten out of the program as the ROTC instructor. He was just doctor, like at that time. So he was just like,
he retired and did a professor job.
He did. He taught specifically the military history class, and that was probably the hardest class I had to take. Because I took criminal justice, dude, me and Skiffy. So that was the hardest class I've ever had to take. And then it was in the time that like all the stuff was happening with my daughter and stuff. My wife was pregnant, and we were finding out all the stuff with my daughter. So it's just like, that was a rough course, but I mean, we got through it. So
I do have. I think our last segment of this question is the same question that every big training event you do. Like I still remember when I was a cadet at field training and stuff, advanced camp. I still remember this kind of
don't know what that is.
All these questions, right? We'll talk about that in another episode. But what was the most memorable moments and funniest moments during your OCS experience that you can remember?
Funniest moments during OCS. At the time, this was scary, terrifying. During Nightland navigation, right before we headed into our test, we did like a buddy Nightland thing. So, just me and somebody else. Mind you, we know this person because he was stationed at the 973rd out of Amarillo.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I know where you're talking about.
Yeah, so we know this guy. So okay. he can vouch for our experience. So we went on this buddy Nightland thing. Man, we were walking. It's like 1 a.m. We're exhausted, and as we're walking past, one of these trails, I see like this little tiny silhouette just kind of like crawling through the floor, just kind of very tiny, about like this big. And then all of a sudden, it just starts towards us, and I just start running because I'm terrified. I was like, I don't know what I've seen. At this point, I've seen like venomous snake. I've seen crazy spiders. I've seen ticks. I see, like, you know what? And I'm probably one of the cleanest persons, you know. I get showered twice a day. And so just to be out in the field situations, like, all right, I'm 100% in it. But this is already stressful enough as it is for me. And yeah, just to be chased by a wild boar, it's like, it's like, no shit, there it was. You guys are not going to believe this. Obviously, it was a little bit hard for people to believe. Like, I know, I promise you, this is what changed you. So yeah, that was one of the craziest
My man,
ones.
You are talking to a man who used an M240 Bravo and shot up a fucking raccoon in the middle of the night. All right. So trust me, I totally understand. You see those two beady little fucking eyes in pitch black darkness.
Yeah.
And the
like,
reflection. And you're like, I'm going to fucking kill that thing and run away.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah. I have another one. This was really hilarious. When we were doing, I think it was our second week of six, so squad tactical exercise. So we were evaluated as being squad leaders. At the time, the folks that are doing direct commission, that are going through the direct commissioning course, which for the folks that don't know, the direct commissioning course is if you have a specific specialty, like you're a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, the Army will give you a direct commission, but you still have to do it's a 4-week course, a 3-week course that you do, 3-4 weeks. Very condensed version of OCS, very easy, very easy. So we used to see those guys with a little bit of envy, but they also have, instead of doing 2 weeks of six, which like we did, they only had to do like 3 days, and that's it. They marched down to the same area we were at, and their cadre, they were just hazing them the entirety of those 3 weeks. And when I talk about it's like day and night, crazy. But we were getting some of that too, because they brought out this giant speaker and they started playing the Outcast song, "Hey Ya."
God.
On me, this one specific verse, when he's kind of like transitioning over to the all right, okay, now lady. But they were like, all right, constantly for the entirety of the 72 hours that we were there. It was rough. It was rough for them, but we were rough. It was rough for us because we were just like literally right there. And then they kind of their cadre came over to us and they said, "Hey, you guys want to join in the whole hazing?" So we're like, "Hell yeah, let's do it."
You fuckers. That's fucked up.
Yeah. So we just started getting like a bunch of blanks and sim rounds, and we're just tossing them over at like random hours of the night. It was fun. What's
even funnier, like for the people watching, is like most direct commissions. These are like lawyers, doctors, like surgeons and shit. Like the fucking astronaut major that you saw, the first one in the reserve. These are like super specialized people that never touched a weapon probably in their life.
They will never do PT again beyond that.
So like this is the chance. This is like the only time that we have to haze them. This is the only Army experience they're ever gonna get besides just hospital or fucking paperwork. That's fucked up though. If I heard that Outcast, I feel like if I heard that Outcast song after that training, I'd kill somebody.
So it was so stuck into my head. As soon as I left the field and we went back into our rooms, I just immediately got on my phone. It's like, I need to hear this song completely, because if not, it's just not.
You're just gonna be sitting there like, all right.
I needed to get that sucker out of my system, like badly.
You guys are like walking in formation. All right.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. Honestly, that takes the cake. I can't think of a better one than hazing doctors and lawyers and shit.
Yeah, it was one of those really very unique but fun moments. And then for like my happiest moment at OCS, I'm not gonna lie, it was the moment where I realized this is it. It's done. Because every single day that I was at OCS, because we were losing people left and right almost every day, I was thinking, is this the day that I'm actually gonna get recycled and I'm gonna be sent home? Because for me, in my mind, you could get recycled. You could get recycled a lot of times. But I wasn't willing to go through that simply because my wife was pregnant at the time. She was 3 months pregnant. And if I were to take a recycle, that means that I would miss the birth of the baby. So I was like, I'm not going through that. I love the Army, but I love my family more. So, and my wife would, shout out to her. She was a huge champ with saying, you need to go and you need to do this. Because I was almost that close to not going to OCS because hey, you're pregnant. I'm not going to leave you like this. She's like, no. This is for our future. You go ahead and do that.
Okay.
But my happiest moment was like when I realized this is it. I finally passed everything that I needed to do to actually get commissioned. And we were doing this graduation run. It's a very easy run. It was about 4 miles, very slow pace. But it wasn't until we started heading back home, we're seeing cadence. I decided to get out in formation and sing cadence. This is probably the last time that I'm going to sing cadence because you really don't see officers getting out in formation during a run and actually calling cadence. So I got out there. I was like, this is going to be my last time probably calling cadence. And then we take that, that left turn and we're headed back to the OCS footprint. And as you're running in, you see on the sign it says Officer Candace. So you look up and you're like, this is it. It's done. This is like my happiest.
You're locked in like David Goggins, bro. You're like, you always looked in the fucking boats and shit,
Yes.
like.
Absolutely. So it was, dude, it definitely OCS was a memorable experience, something that I will never do again in my life, and I don't want to do again in my life, but it was a memorable experience.
Hey man, that's awesome. It's like those are the memories you're going to be able to like tell kids and shit.
Oh, yeah.
Your friends and all that. Like we still tell like some of our friends and stuff that we meet about like some of our stories and everything like that, from like all the time from being a cadet to like my first training as an officer to like my time as an officer. I'm still going to tell my kid I'm going to be that old disabled vet in a fucking VFW, be like, back in my day, I'm going to go shit in the woods. Like, it's going to be one of those kind of things. But Matt, did you have any other questions on his OCS experience, my man?
Let's see. No, I think you covered a lot of your experiences in OCS and your transition from senior NCO to commissioned officer. So, and funny ass stories as well. So that's fucking awesome. Yeah.
No, but that's great, man. Honestly, I think we're getting ready to move into our last segment, which is our closing thoughts. Matt, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I got you, bud. So, can you explain the difference between going to OCS as enlisted versus as a civilian?
Kind of like the process.
Yeah. So the process itself, it's more or less the same. I worked OCS packets when I was a recruiter, and then working my packet, from an enlisted job. Obviously, if you're an enlisted soldier, you actually have to go through more. It's more paperwork that you have to turn in because you have your military documents that you have to turn in. You have to go through this Army physical. Your body's a little bit slightly more broken than somebody that's coming off the street. So for me, right, going through OCS, I went through OCS when I was, being 29 years old, but that's like 56 in Army years.
Yeah, it is.
A little bit of a broken body. Yeah. So, I have to pay special attention to like taking care of my body. So that's a huge thing. But anyways, going through the process, it's essentially the same. It's almost the same forms, same type of letters of recommendation. The only difference is USEREC, which is the Army Recruiting Command. They do your board itself. And they're the ones that evaluate you and then send you to OCS. And they send you fairly quickly as well. For us, it goes through HRC. They do the evaluation. And then you go through the process of scheduling it with a unit, trying to find a date that fits for you, and then doing all those other things. And mind you also have the opportunity when you're in service OCS, which is what I was when you're prior enlisted. You have the option of going to National Guard state OCS, the traditional, which is like 18 months long. And you also have the option of doing the National Guard accelerated OCS, which is 2 months.
Nobody pick the fucking 18-month one. Don't ever do that. I went to Bullock with somebody that did that. It is literally OCS split up into 18 months, a weekend a month. It is horrible. Don't ever do it.
Yeah, so you do I believe you do 2 weeks at the front end, and then on the back end, you do another 2 weeks, and in between, you do drills every month. It does give you the opportunity of, as a TPU soldier, earning a little bit more money because you can actually drill with the OCS unit, and then you can drill with your regular unit as well. I still don't recommend it, honestly.
Yeah.
Better off just fighting the bullet and just doing the whole either 2 or 3 months one, and that's it, and just getting through it.
Unless you have some crazy special circumstance or you have difficulty with your family, I think it's a well-recommended fact to highly recommend it. Just fight the bullet. Because you're going to have to fight the bullet eventually as an officer anyway. Because you're going to have to be gone for like 2 to 4, 6 months maybe for Bullock anyway, no matter what.
So exactly.
Might as well do it now.
Yeah. And so, yes, if I were to compare it to like all the other commissioning sources that the Army has, which is Officer Candidate School, ROTC, and West Point, they technically say OCS makes the most successful officers, but here's the reason why. OCS, the Army measures a successful officer with these things, which is you need to be 20 years of service, so be able to get to retirement, and then you have to be a lieutenant colonel. That makes us a successful officer in general. Percentage-wise, I think OCS has like a 90% success rate, which is those officers that eventually retire as lieutenant colonels. But though you also have to think, right? OCS commissions about officers a year. ROTC is roughly like 3 or 5, no, I think it's like 6,000 a year, and then West Point is like exactly.
My year group was like, I think the total, because I commissioned at August, literally the last possible part of the year group. My whole year group was like 12,000.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow. And OCS is the only program out there that can actually that you can change it based on the time. So World War III pops off tomorrow, we can set up OCS courses throughout the entirety of the United States, and we can pop soldiers. I think that what they used to call it back in the days, like the 90-day wonder, because you just spit out officers within 90 days constantly. And so that's one of the fun parts of OCS. If you ask me, if I were to turn back the clock, I would still do ROTC. But at the end of the day, I'm here now. I exactly. I would definitely do it. And here's the reason why. The moment we commission, we're all the same. I am just as much as you guys are first lieutenant now, but I'm just as much as a second lieutenant as you are.
Captain.
Sorry.
Hey, now,
congratulations. I did not know. Thank you. Congratulations.
Don't worry. Captain retired, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. After this, we'll hop on TikTok and you can counsel me. But yeah, I'm just as much I'm just as much an officer as you guys are, and regardless of if I have a different type of experience, mind you, it's valuable experience. But at the end of the day, we're all gonna get looked at.
Yeah, but you get to call yourself a Mustang, so it's cooler and shit. Yeah. So I will say I agree with that. Like I've talked to many people. I went to like cross trainings. Like when I was a cadet, I did some shadowing trainings with people who were from like West Point and like military service academies as well, because it's not just West Point. Everyone thinks service academy, they think West Point. There's actually a few, like the Citadel, for example. There's NEMI in New Mexico. Yeah. There's a few different service academies. They all have very, very specialized like things. Something I learned and this is my parts of the thing that I hate how they treat OCS. OCS actually gets last picks when it comes to branch picking, if people didn't know that. So how it works when you commission is you pick a component and then you pick a branch based off your component, because it makes sense not to do it the other way around. You can't go field artillery and then go reserve. There's no field artillery within the reserve. So they do component and then they do the branch. We'll talk in a little bit about how your step of that process was. I think you do yours a little bit before that. You kind of select and go into it, and then you go to OCS and you're already kind of you know what you're going. So when they're doing the year group analysis, they take the entire year group. Service academies get a pick first. That's how it works. So
always.
However, they also have a requirement. So like, for example, West Point, they require you to put a combat arms within your top 3. I think like 3 combat arms within your top 5 that you have to put. Right. So most of them, since they're picked first, they mostly go, if you look at their commissioning rate, 90% of them, if not more, go combat arms. Like I'm talking infantry, armor, field artillery, stuff like that. Aviation, even. So they get that pick. Then it's ROTC, but ROTC is massive, like we talked about. It's bigger than the service academies. It's much bigger than OCS. So ROTC takes a shit ton of those picks, like right off the bat. Like if you're OCS trying to compete for active duty, it's hard. I feel for them, unless you're already guaranteed that before you go and sign it.
Yeah, no. So wait, remember when you enlist to go to OCS off the street, you're already going active duty, but you still have to compete there. So at OCS, they do everything that you just mentioned, right? And then you also have to add a different layer in OCS, particularly for the active duty folks, which is if they're in service, they are at a separate pile. If they're entry level, they have their different quotas as well. So it's a little bit weird, but somebody that just coming off the street is not competing with somebody that's in service for, let's say, that finance slot. However, this does happen at OCS. I think it's about 80-something% of the folks at OCS get their first 5 picks within their first 5 choices, but you really have to be bottom of the pile at the schoolhouse to not even get close to your top 5. Not even close.
Yeah.
However, in the middle of OCS, we do have something called the branching ceremony, which is a really fun activity. Mind you, as a reservist, I already knew the branch that I was going into. Why? Because when I went through the process, they just asked me, it's like, which is the one that you want? And I said, hey, I want to be a quartermaster. And then they said, hey, we have these lists of units that you can go into. Which one you want? And I picked the unit. So I already knew the units and the branch that I was going into. So for branching ceremony, for me, was easy. But the way branching ceremony works is you get on stage, they give you a little paper, and then you open that paper, and that's when you find out where you're branching into. And then you have to like put it up in the air and then scream out loud, hey, Officer Candidate Toyos, infantry or whatever. And there were a handful of folks that just really were avoiding combat arms. And
awesome.
They were just saying it with like the back of their teeth, like, infantry. Oh, man. Most of them, man, I feel sorry for them. But also OCS does give you they do give you an opportunity to actually change your branch, but it has to be a conversation with like HRC. You may have to find somebody else that wants to switch with you, but that's not necessarily always the case, because you might have somebody, let's say, for example, if I were active duty and I were a lot, and I have all this experience as a loggy, and they decide to branch me armor, I could say, hey, I think it's more convenient for the Army to branch me into quartermaster simply because I'm bringing all this experience. So it would be a better fit not only for me but for the military itself. And so there have been those cases where that has been made, and that it has. But ultimately, obviously, you have to be diligently. But at the end of the day, it's what the Army says. So.
That's crazy.
Absolutely.
They open that envelope and it's just like a bottle of ibuprofen. And you're like,
I'm telling you, look for the 311th Infantry OCS page on Facebook, and they'll post like the live for the branching ceremony and for every cycle, and you can tell we're sure the ones that are just like infantry, and they're suffering through it. They're really going through it.
That's so funny. So ROTC, how they do it. So service academies do it pretty much the same way. They do it pretty much the same way. They have like their auditorium, right, that they haze people and like do weird shit in or whatever. But they do it there. ROTC does it totally different. It's so school driven and so school dependent. Unfortunately for us, ours sucked in a sense where it's like, it wasn't a super nice ceremony where you found out. It was a fucking email. Man. It was like a mass email and shit. But what I kind of thought was funny as shit too. Because the running joke, right, is, you rank your branches 1 through 15, 17, whatever amount there is, right? The running joke in ROTC is if you put Seaburn anywhere other than last place, you're going to get it, right? Some people got it.
Yep.
And when they got it, and I'm talking people who put like 13 or like 14, like near the bottom, right? When they got it, Matt remembers.
Yep. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Pepperidge Farm remembers. They pissed. So we were like drinking and having a good time. For the guy, we went reserve. So same process. I picked my unit. In my branch. I had to do a VHR. I picked 1 through 3, and then a unit. It's like 3 units, and the branch that's tied with their position and line number, and then that's your branch that you pick. That's how.
Yeah.
So
I got lucky for mine. It was just like I was already SMP cadet, and they're just like, oh well, you're MI, and I was like, cool, sounds good.
Awesome.
Yeah, see, like there's so many caveats with it, but like it was funny though to see the people who were like active duty, because they found out, hey, I'm active, and then they're like, okay, now they're picking their branches and stuff like that, and now it's like, let's see what happens, and sure enough, and it's like, oh,
field artillery,
field artillery, fuck that.
Yeah,
I'm so glad I got out of that shit. But like. God, I would have been retiring 2 years ago if I was doing that shit. But like that's what I mean. Like, I do want to go back a little bit to the enlisted versus civilian. I will say though, from experience and from helping previous soldiers as well, within like my current unit and like other units as well that's reached out like from peers and stuff like that, it is so much harder on the enlisted side versus the civilian side in the sense of waivers. Like, the only thing that freaking civilian really has to worry about is like ASVAB, their medical. They're usually younger anyway, so they pass that. Because they can lie through their medical exam. It happens 99% of the time. It's really hard to lie as an enlisted person because you already have a military health record.
So it's like the Genesis.
You're on Genesis and shit, and everything's on there, so you can't lie about it. You know, like it's crazy the amount of stuff that disqualifies you. Like, I have migraines on my Genesis portal that disqualifies you. Migraines, like it's insane. And
I knew folks that had to get off of permanent profiles just to be able to go to the course. That's how rough it was for them. So, and they had to wait a while just to go through all of that. I knew most of the stuff that when I did it, I didn't really have that much things on the record, so it was a fairly simple process for me. I think it was a more tedious just to get a school date, but for other folks, it was because of that. Just getting through that physical portion was rough. And then the date as well, because there's very specific limited quotas that reserve commands have versus just folks that are coming off the street, which is more geared towards them.
Yeah, and then there's my wife. Oh, go ahead, Sid.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
I was just saying,
then there's my wife, who she has her bachelor's in nursing, and she's thinking about joining the military as well. And they were just like, hey, you can do a direct commission. You just have to go to a 5.5-week course. And it's like, what? It's like,
I hope she likes that. I hope she likes that Outcast song.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
All right.
But you know what I mean? I feel like it's unfair to the enlisted population. I feel like we should kind of treat it the same as a civilian. I feel like the process should be the exact same, right? You know, like, I get it, the medical side, but there's also stupid parts of it where it's like the burden of the waivers is on the soldier. If you're enlisted, the burden of the waiver is on the soldier. Like, it's on the soldier's responsibility to get the waiver process. They have to follow up on it regularly. They have to set up an interview with the battalion commander. They have to make sure the battalion commander is pushing the waiver. Then they have to go to the brigade and do an interview with the brigade commander in case it's at their level. When a civilian's going into OCS, if they have a waiver, it's handled by the recruiter, basically. Because they don't have any. They don't have side on there. So it's kind of unfair in that sense. And then, like, I've seen it to where this was the most messed up thing I've ever seen. It was an enlisted guy. He was going through the packet. He had to submit a waiver, right? And he hit the age limit. So now he got his waiver approved. He had to submit now an age waiver to get approved to go to OCS. Because at the time, I think it was like 32 or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Now they don't care.
Now they don't give a shit.
Yeah, now I'm almost certain it's because
they're like, hey, are you getting AARP?
To get recruits. No, yeah, I think the oldest person that we had at OCS was like 43 years old.
Damn.
Yeah, it's like a 43-year-old E5, former E5. Honestly, the dude would run circles around everybody. I think he had like a 12-minute, and you wouldn't like a 12-minute 2-mile, and you couldn't even tell because he was a little bit on the heavy side. But that dude would smoke everybody.
He's a fucking gazelle.
Yeah, really freaking awesome. But yeah, I think as the whole near peer adversary thing starts to escalate a little bit more, and more of our role in the world gets a little bit more defined, and who our adversaries are, Rush, China, all that stuff. And we start to see this influx of folks, you're going to start seeing more processes either getting thrown out the window completely or being a little bit more streamlined. And unfortunately, the whole waiver issue is not a big enough issue because I'm pretty sure it's only a handful that happens.
Right.
And it's not getting brought up to anybody's attention. Now, if you have like an entire, 20, 40 people for an entire course that are going through the exact same issue, that's when the attention gets drawn on it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That's when we get new PT uniforms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So everybody knows that's what we wanted.
Hey man, as long as we don't go back to like, looking like the old camo with the gray and shit like that, we don't.
Yeah.
That is a chapter in history we need to forget about. All right.
Yep.
I'm so glad.
They're great for sleeping. I still sometimes, especially when it's cold outside, I still pop out that turtleneck.
Oh, the little, oh man, that thing's ugly.
I just don't do PT with it.
Yeah.
Can't stand you.
Yeah.
I threw that shit away. I was like, I'm done with this shit. I can finally toss this. No, but I mean, it's awesome, man. You really killed it. You're doing great things out there. I see you on Instagram and stuff. You look like you're about to run for like Senate or some shit. Every time I see you, like you're all dressed up and ready to go. And I know damn well you probably rub it into your peers' face when they're like, "What do you do?" I work at the fucking Pentagon. Like, what do you fucking do? Yeah. What do you do?
Okay.
Like, I know damn well you use it to check some people, huh?
So sometimes they cadre at OCS, they didn't find out until about halfway through that I worked at the Pentagon. At the specific offices that I worked with, and not necessarily saying, I'm not saying that they treated me differently or any better whatsoever.
They're like, he has my name written down.
When it came time for me to like bring up a specific issue, it wasn't rubbed off. It was, it wasn't blown off. It was like, all right, what do you got? How can we help? They weren't dismissive. So it was definitely a very interesting thing. And then obviously my day to day, I'll sometimes feel like it's like, this is something cool. And mind you, quick story. My wife and I, we went on when we were dating, we came to DC. This is where I live. I live in DC. We came to DC for our first trip as a couple. And when we were driving past the Pentagon, I told her, like, I remember this conversation specifically. Can you imagine me working there one day? That would be so cool. I was like 21 at the time. I didn't know, what was going to happen in my future. I wasn't even trying for it, but I was like, that would be so awesome. This is like the mecca of the military. And then she reminded me once I ended up getting this job, it's like, you remember when you specifically said that? It's like That's very awesome experience, and it's very rewarding. I love it.
That's great.
You spoke it into existence, man.
Yeah,
you fucking did
it. The Pentagon heard you, and they're like,
we need this guy.
We need to get this guy. Matt, what you got? What you got from my man Isaac?
All right, man. So we're wrapping up things. We just want to know one more thing: is what are your future goals as a commissioned officer, and how do you plan to achieve those goals?
So there's only one specific goal that I have as a commissioned officer. Everything else is gravy, which is I want to live the experience of being a company commander. As an enlisted soldier, I used to always say this, the very key words that I had was, I recommend you, hey sir, I recommend you do this, I recommend you do that. And then I would turn around and then I would get the guidance that I recommended, I would get it back, and then I would just go over to my soldiers and say, hey, we're going to do this. So I would definitely like the experience of running a company. Mind you, I have 7 years until I retire, or until I hit my 20 years. And if you ask me today, I'm probably going to retire once I hit my 20, regardless of the rank that I'm at, regardless of what I'm going to reevaluate when I get there to see if I might stretch this out a little bit more and probably retire, try to aim to retire as a lieutenant colonel. I have more or less of an idea of what I need to do those things. But in the meantime, I want to take a shot at going for that, and then doing some other assignments in the reserves that are they don't necessarily dictate what a successful officer is. So, for example, you have to do your platoon leader time, your XO time, your company commander, working at a staff level, all that stuff. But just to do different neat assignments, like a planner job or something like that, just to expand my skills a little bit more, which is one of the big things that the Army has.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, company command, honestly, most important job in the Army. I don't give a fuck what anyone says, honestly. Here, one sec, Matt, if you want to jump in real quick.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I believe company command. Of course, me being AGR, I'm probably not going to have that opportunity unless I get out. There's very, very slim opportunities in the AGR world for getting company command time, but I mean, I can expand my leadership in other ways, so it's not a.
And you're MI, so I don't think it's even required, right?
Like, no, he's a team guy. That's him. Yep. He's like civil affairs, dude. They're team guys. They deploy in teams, so. The most he'll lead is like a team of 4, and that's if he's not doing DTS for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And as an AGR, as an officer,
welcome to the world.
That's pretty much all I'm going to be doing. Yeah.
I feel you.
I will say though, company command man, it's the most important job in the Army. Like I said, there's no more important job. I don't care what anyone says. You're the one leading from the front. You're in the line company. My only recommendation, my man, is pick a line company and like an actual company. Don't do like that MCT stuff or HHC command. Absolutely not. Don't do that. Do a line company, you know, kind of like our favorite little fuel company that I was in, you know, kind of like that.
Oh, yeah, the one that was always in trouble.
Always in trouble, baby. Always in trouble. To give the people some perspective, one of my first interactions with Toyos was when I was in my company. I was in the cubicle area. This man comes running out down the hall with an Excel sheet. And he's like, whose soldiers use the government travel card for OnlyFans subscriptions? And I was like, my eyes were like, God, I hope it's not mine. So, and he looked at me. He's like, no, but yours is the one who bought the fucking car.
I'm telling you, the pandemic was a hell of a time for the government travel card. Oh my God.
Wow.
Some of the weirdest purchases out there. I get it. I'm pretty sure people felt lonely, locked in their house. Still.
Cabin fever was hitting, bro. Oh, that shit blew my mind, man. And I was like, wow. And that was like one of my first interactions with Toyos. My man in here was just like, you could tell this man just came out of getting grilled about this shit.
Every week it was always the exact same thing. What are you doing to bring these numbers down? It's like, at the time I was an E6, I'm only a stat sergeant. I can't do much. You know.
You're like, I'm tired of these ULO reportings.
Exactly.
If I could give any advice, man, honestly, you got more experience when it comes to like kind of like the higher level stuff than me. But honestly, man, it's just enjoy your company time, because this is it. Like after you do your company time, it's 1 in a million to really get another chance to really do it at like a good one. You know what I mean? Because if you do a follow-on one, you're burnt out. Honestly, it's a one-time thing. You give it your all, and then you're good. Honestly, it should be a one-time thing. If you're able to give 100% for 2 company commands, you're like, hey, bro,
rock star.
You're a fucking rock star, man. Like, like, all right, like Band of Brothers type shit. Like, you're fucking
definitely. Like, I don't know if you guys ever had the chance of reading General Mattis's or Secretary Mattis's book Call Sign Chaos.
I have been.
Yeah, so he kind of talks about like his experience as a company commander. And I believe it's as a company commander, he says that's one of the jobs that he misses the most, because as soon as he left it, he said that was the last time that I had any type of direct interaction with soldiers. Mind you, he said, yeah, you have some form of interaction with your battalion commander, but it's like when you're a company commander, that's it. You're really in a position to like impact people's lives, and then in turn impact the mission, whatever it is that you're assigned. When you're in my case, when I was a platoon sergeant, I could definitely work on impacting soldiers' lives. I won't speak for them, but I can say that I did my best to actually do those things. And then and all that was this, it was just for me to ask and say, hey, let's go and do this. But just reading from the perspective of Secretary Mattis, it's like you do this, you impact their lives, and then you can also say, okay, now let's go and do this. Which is something that I really hope that I can get the opportunity to do.
Yeah, man,
awesome.
I don't know a better way to put it, man. Like, I'm leaving the military after doing company time my entire career. Like, I'm leaving it like the happiest I can really do it. I did some staff time at the battalion level, did not like it. But the company time that I did it for a long time. I was company time for more than most people are.
Dude, way too long, dude. Honestly,
5 years?
Yeah, like, dude, that's wild.
Damn.
Yeah.
But the biggest things that I learned during like my time in the company is you're never gonna make everyone happy. You're gonna there's gonna be days that you piss everyone off, even though you kind of have no choice but to piss everyone off. And the whole thing with recommending is hilarious, because I remember being at the company time and being told about a stupid ass mission our company was about to do, and be like, hey, sir, ma'am, I recommend we don't do this because of XYZ. and I get told, well, too bad, too sad, go fuck yourself. And it's like, so don't worry, you'll get back to that recommend life. In between company and like battalion time, it's go back to recommending. I hope you don't miss it.
Absolutely. And that actually brings me to this. Give me 1 second. When I joined the military, and this is for everybody that's reading, that loves to read, there's this book. It's called Utterly When You Are Not in Charge. Every time that I would either get somebody as a squad leader, as a platoon sergeant, or anybody that was actually, that I saw that I had some like legit potential to being a good leader, I will always recommend this, because this book talks about the power of influence, right? And how you can influence others very specifically. And you can influence others through like your knowledge, through experience, through simply talking your way through this, kind of looking like somebody that knows what they're talking about. And so that book is incredible. I think it's helped me out more because of that, because I've never really been in a position. I was never really in a position where I had like, full authority. And so just to work around that, to try to steer something in like the correct direction, whether it be a program that I was helping with running or whatever. Your words matter. You can be a pompous asshole and say no, so you're doing this wrong. It's supposed to be like that. You're just gonna create enemies. But it's like, hey, I recommend we go this way because of X, Y, Z. It's different. So I already recommended 2 good books. So, and I love to read, so I'll recommend 1,000 more.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah, brother. Hey, Matt, so what else you got from my man Isaac over here?
I believe that's it, man. We really appreciate you taking in your time, especially it's already 11:30 over there where you're at. So
don't worry, I'm only gonna get ready to feed the baby.
Yeah, he's up till 3, 4 in the morning. Wakes up
just
5, good to go.
That was exactly chilling.
This is a break in between.
But no, seriously, we really appreciate you taking the time to be on this podcast, explain your experiences from being a senior NCO and commissioned officer. And we appreciate all the experience that you've told us tonight, as well as the books that we're going to put the links to those books that you mentioned throughout this podcast, so we can have it in for our viewers as well. So no, we really appreciate your time, man. And it's good seeing you. So.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. Skip, I really enjoyed it. It's been awesome, and just to connect with you guys has been incredible.
Yeah, man.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, man.
It really has. I hope to God you never have to deal with that whole GTC business again like that, because my man, I've never seen you more stressed in my life. I'd say you'd be ripping your hair out, but it's fucking, we passed that level.
There have been times where they've approached me. It's like, hey, we know that you have this experience. Would you want to? Like, no.
Yeah, I know damn well you're like, I'd rather grow my hair out and then fucking rip it out again.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, we could not be more excited to have you as our first guest on the podcast as well. You are a perfect epitome of like a first guest on a podcast, and we appreciate your time, man. And for the viewers, thank you guys for watching. Next week we're gonna hit some other topics on Army Reserves. Just stay in touch, man, and good talking to you. So
awesome. Take care, guys. Thanks so much.
Take care, Isaac.